This is Brianna Richardson-Jones. I attend Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Today I will be interviewing Dr. Melvin Jenkins on April 4th, 2016 in Pratt Hall in Indiana, Pennsylvania. This interview is being recorded as part of the Inclusive Future Faculty Initiative sponsored by the Frederick Douglass Institute Collaborative of Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. The interview is being recorded on high-end video equipment.
I'm a full professor at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I am the chairperson of the Department of Developmental Studies at IUP. And so my rank is professor, my position is chairperson, my department is developmental studies.
How long have you worked at this university?
I've worked at the university since 1992, and I've worked in this department since 1997.
And how long have you been employed as a professor?
As a professor since the summer of 1997.
And that was at IUP? At
IUP. I've always worked in higher education at IUP.
What made you decide to attend graduate school to pursue a terminal degree?
Well, that's a good question. I chose to go to graduate school because I found out that my opportunities would expand with increasing education. I had a master's degree when I came into higher education, and I got a good job, a decent job in administration. But I soon discovered that the people that were really advancing in higher education were those with the terminal degree. And so I felt like it was really important that I get a terminal degree, particularly as an African American. We don't have a lot of terminal degree seekers, even though we have a good number of people that are college educated and post-baccalaureate educated. But I felt as though the terminal degree would basically take all the limits off. And I've discovered that it actually has. Once I got the terminal degree, I was able to achieve all the things that I wanted to achieve in higher education.
At what point did you decide to become a professor?
I decided to become a professor after working in administration and feeling as though, even though I enjoyed working in administration, I felt as though my ability to impact students on a large scale was limited. And so I felt like getting in the classroom, getting on the faculty was going to give me more student access, more ability to impact students' lives, and that's really what made the difference. It was kind of getting a little taste of experience with students, and then discovering that there was more available to me once I decided to pursue this route.
What are your responsibilities as a faculty member? As
a faculty member in my department, as the chairperson, I do a lot of administrative work, although I do have a caseload of advisees that I have to also handle as well. So I evaluate faculty. I obviously serve on a lot of committees and meetings and that kind of thing. I'm involved in some areas of recruitment and grant writing, those kinds of things. But I can tell you by far the most rewarding aspect of what I do is student interaction. So I advise a good number of academic issues just with students, as well as sometimes personal advice, conversation, mentoring, basically helping students to become more comfortable in what they're doing.
So what would you say is a typical day in the life of a professor?
I don't think there is such a thing, but I guess if you were to try to imagine what a typical day would be in the life of a professor, it would obviously include prep work for courses, grading for courses, and that kind of thing, advising students, and then actual teaching. I think a professor's job is interesting in the sense that we're not ever really off work, even though there are times that we're not on campus, because of email and texting and social media. Students reach out to us at all times, day and night, and I've been known to answer emails 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. If I wake up and I look at my iPad and there's some emails on there, I'll just go ahead and respond at that point. And so our office hours, even though they may be limited to X number of hours per week on campus, we're always doing work. Whenever we get to a computer screen, it seems as though there's something to do. So a typical day would be a day of responding to emails, responding to requests, interacting with students, instructing, and basically interacting also with colleagues.
What would you describe as some of the pros and cons of being a professor?
Well, the pros are obviously it's a good way to make a living. It's a professional, it's a terminal situation in the sense that this is the ultimate goal in higher education, as far as I'm concerned. The compensation is certainly considerable. You have a fair amount of time away from campus. Whenever there's breaks for students, there are also breaks for faculty. So that could include summers, certainly holidays, spring break, those kinds of things. So that's a very positive. I don't necessarily know that I personally feel as though there are any negatives. I mean, obviously there are negatives in any walk of life. Anything you do is going to have something that you may not necessarily enjoy. But in terms of the negatives of the job, I don't think that it is necessarily hazardous to our health. I don't think it's necessarily hazardous to our family life. I think that it really is a position, a job, a career that one could blossom and become very fruitful in without a lot of the stresses that may be associated with other jobs.
Why do you think there are so many misconceptions surrounding the professorate?
Oh, well, that's easy. I think it's because it takes so much school to get to it. I think a lot of people are intimidated by the fact that, you have to obviously get a bachelor's degree and then get a master's degree and then go for a terminal degree, a doctorate. And at that point, I think a lot of people feel burned out or tired and they don't really want to go, that whole extra mile. I think it's worth it, but I don't know that there are a whole lot of people that, at the moment of trying to enter into it feel as though it's worth it.
How many years does it take to get a PhD?
Well, depending on your program, let's just look at it, break it down into little chunks. Obviously, you have a 4-year degree that most people take 4 or 5 or 6 years to get. You'll have a master's degree, which generally takes about 2 years, 4 or 5, maybe 6 semesters, but more likely 4 or 5 semesters. And then when you go for the terminal degree, that would be an additional probably 3 years of coursework, and then you're going to have to do research for your dissertation. So, I've seen people do it in as little as 3.5 to 4 years. I've seen people do it as long as 7 to 8 years, just depending on, your topic and your motivation. There are some people that are working and doing it. They're going part-time. I know one person in particular that took nearly 10 years to get the doctorate. She ultimately did get it, but she was working at the time and going part-time. And then when it came time to do the research, she didn't really, in my opinion, devote the amount of time and energy that needed to get it done. It really has to do with an individual's choices. But I would say it's probably 3 to 5 years. It's a safe thing to say that's on top of the master's, on top of the bachelor's.
Do you think that it's important for unrepresented minorities to become professors?
Yes. I think that unrepresented minorities need to be more represented in the professorate, mainly because obviously we have a lot of minority students coming through. I think it's important that minority and majority students see that there are more than just majority professors. I think it's important for minority students to see someone that looks like them in charge of the classroom and in charge of instruction. As far as majority people, they need to understand that obviously people of color are, capable, able, and willing to do what it takes to become professors as well. I think it's just a win-win all the way around. I think that underrepresented people are clearly not representative in the profession, and I think it's important that we go ahead and take the next step, do what we have to do to get there.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
I would like to add that I love my job, and that I would like to add that I think anyone that would try it and really get into it would discover that it's one of the most rewarding jobs you can ever have. And I don't know of anyone of any color who is on the faculty that hates being on the faculty at a university. I don't know anyone that's like that. Now, there may be some, but I'm not aware of any.
Okay, thank you for letting me interview you.
Thank you for interviewing me. Thank you for your time.